Time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Do want to thank R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend, Warsaw, and Fort Wayne. Go to rbcarcompany.com. Boy, howdy, do I have a lot to talk about today. Well, if you didn't figure it out, yesterday, I know I'm not supposed to tell everybody the secret. Yesterday I wasn't here. I was out of town yesterday. So I recorded that Sunday night. As a result, there's a couple of things that broke that didn't get addressed, which we will address today. I do apologize about that. I always try to pre-record at the latest possible moment. That way, at least if something does happen, I'm able to go ahead and get it out there. Most of the time, I'm pretty good at it. Luckily, there wasn't any earth-shattering thing that actually took place. Well, I mean, unless you count Whoopi Goldberg saying that she's struggling financially. I mean, there is that. After all, she did, Morgan, she grew up middle class. What else do we got? The new thing that's racist is geology. So we'll get into how geology is racist. You know what I should have done? I should have booked an interview with Impress Jewelry Creations about that. Oh my God. More updates on the FBI's fake murder statistics, further corroborating everything that I've been telling you for months that we now know to be true. Even the updated FBI data completely off. And again, we'll cover a lot of that stuff. So lots of things going on. Tons of stuff actually going on. So I want to, yes, we will get to the Morning Joe thing. Trust me, we'll get to the Morning Joe thing. That is, I'm sorry, did I or did I not specifically say that would likely happen on this show?
You did. You called it. You definitely called it.
Did I?
Yeah.
Did I? I feel like I specifically called it for those two in particular. I just, you know who also used to really love Donald Trump, who used to probably want to put her head down and get to work with Donald Trump? That was Joy Behar. True story from The View. Joy Behar, who now tells you that he's the most evil human being on the face of the earth. Go back and watch all of the times that Donald Trump was on The View before he became the serious contender for the Republicans, even when he had announced, and tell me that she isn't licking her lips and undressing him with her eyes. With dollar signs, of course, not with adoration. Tell me you don't see that happening. Go back and watch it. If you can stomach it, go back and watch it. I'm telling you right now. Yeah, so the Morning Joe stuff, we'll definitely get to that. Don't worry. If you're on the live stream on Rumble, I decided to do the whole thing. The whole theme was RFK Jr. and the Fruity Pebble thing. I've got the CUCKoo for Cocoa Puffs mascot on there. New York Times is CUCKoo for Cocoa Puffs. I did some funny things with the letters, which I think are amusing. And for those of you who get it, you're good people. And I feel like I have to talk about this just because, one, it's slightly amusing. Two, I do think it's a real issue. And three, it's not that it's a silly Fruity Pebble story. It's a story about the news media willing to lie to anybody about anything over stuff that frankly shouldn't be lied about. This isn't that difficult. Is there anybody out there in this audience? Now, I know that you probably have, that moron who drinks boxed wine and sniffs their own farts and things like that at work that probably has no idea that we allow a lot of things in our food that are not allowed in other parts of the world. Now, there's two different thoughts here. I think everybody understands that, but there are two different thoughts here. Thought number one is it really isn't that big of a deal. They just have more restrictive standards. And let's be perfectly honest. A lot of the European so-called health standards are nutty and a little crazy. So there is that. So there is a legitimate case to go, you're not really doing anything super dangerous or super wrong by having some of these additives and things like that in the American food supply that you don't see in Europe because, well, the Europeans are a little nutso. That's a perfectly reasonable position for you to have, by the way. the other side of it is, well, if everybody is banning the same things, even if the concern is a small concern, they're banning it for a reason. Wouldn't it make more sense to dye something red with a naturally occurring red as opposed to a laboratory concocted chemical? And that's a valid position to have as well. The truth is, honestly, folks, is it really going to make you much healthier? I don't know. But is it a better thing than what we have been force-fed by the HHS and the so-called health lobby in this country over the years? Yeah. Here's my position. I think that we have, as a country, gotten to a point where we realize that, hey, we've got a lot of health issues, even if our life expectancy is increasing. I'm not going to count how the life expectancy declined. That's all COVID stuff, okay? Before COVID, life expectancy was still going up in the United States. When you took out suicides and things like that, the life expectancy in the United States is still a lot higher than most of the Western world. But we do have a problem with suicide here. Now, maybe chemicals in our food are an issue. There are some people who make that claim. I don't know, all right? But when you strip away some of the things that happen here in much higher numbers than things that happen elsewhere, if you strip that away, we do live as long or longer than most of the Western world. And right now, of course, the narrative is that we have the worst life expectancy in the Western world. But when you adjust for suicide and things like that, we don't. We don't have the worst. So there is a case to be made that there really isn't anything wrong with our food supply. The other issue is, well, we're also really good at making medication because most of the medication and breakthroughs in medical science in the entire world happen here in the United States. And the rest of the world is subsidized by us, which is why things are much more expensive here for healthcare than they are overseas. They don't have to develop the things that we develop. So the cost goes into that. The money is then made here. We then subsidize the rest of the world, which, by the way, is a crap system, just so we're clear. But that's how it happens. It's not that there's an evil system in place per se in the United States and their systems are good. Their systems are actually really bad. Ours is not great, but their systems are really bad. So we have a lot of very complex issues that are affecting all of this. But I'm at the point now where it's like, okay, everything that they have told you from the government on down, everything that they've told you was healthy isn't. Everything that they've told you that isn't healthy turns out it is. And I'm talking about normal foods, not junk food, okay? Turns out it is healthy. They told you that red meat was bad for you. No, it isn't. It's great for you. They told you that soy was good for you. No, it isn't. It's really bad for you. They told you that you're supposed to be sucking down, 14 loaves of bread every single day. That's going to kill you. They told you that eating salad all the time would be very healthy. It's not. Everything that they have told you, eggs are terrible for you, they said. Bad for your cholesterol. All cholesterol is bad. Turns out not all cholesterol is bad. They keep adjusting these things. And a lot of people who are still in the medical field and even in the medical research field, they're still subscribed to these old, outdated, now debunked, disproven notions of what is and is not healthy. Coffee's bad for you. Coffee's good for you. Water's bad for you. Water's good for you. I know I'm being facetious, but you get what I'm saying. They go back and forth on this stuff. South Park wasn't the first people in the world to tell you that the food pyramid was upside down. They weren't the first ones. But if you watch that episode, or if you just pull up the food pyramid right now, you know what? Let's just do that. I know I've done it on the show before. Let's just pull up the food pyramid, okay? Just the standard food pyramid. All right, they tell you to have fats and oils and sweets sparingly. Now, this is a modified food pyramid from what they gave us when we were little. It used to just be fats. Then they told you that all fat was equal. Remember that? And then they tried telling you that saturated fat and unsaturated fat, were different. And then saturated fat was bad, but unsaturated fat still not good for you. But saturated fat was worse. It turns out that that whole system is all screwed up. You need fat. Remember the low fat diet Huge in the 90s. Remember that? A lot of the moms and grandmas probably listening to this program right now probably went through it, felt miserable on it. Turns out you need fat. Fat's really good for you. Some fat, not all fat, but some fat is really, really good for you. It's actually what feeds your brain. Turns out if you don't have fat, your brain makes you stupid. Why do you think you can't stand the conversation with the local vegan every time you talk to them? They don't get a lot of good fat. They're dumb. Their brain is literally dying. So fat sparingly, yogurts, cheese sparingly, meat sparingly, and then, lots and lots of vegetables. Turns out vegetables are not the greatest thing in the world all the time. You should have them in much smaller quantities than they say. And then have yourself a crap ton of bread and cereal and everything else. Folks, 6 to 11 servings a day is what they're recommending for bread, cereal, and pasta. You know what happens to you if you have 11 servings of bread, cereal, and pasta a day? You get the diabetes and you die. That's what happens. It's upside down. Vegetables kind of stay where it is. There's nothing wrong with having some vegetables, but vegetables also have a lot of allergens. A lot of people are allergic to a lot of vegetables. So you start looking at everything that they have told you, just from a baseline, whether you agree with everything that RFK Jr. is saying at all, and then we'll get into the New York Times fiasco. Whether you agree with everything he's saying or not, one thing we all know is that we have been lied to consistently for generations because of lobbyists about what is and is not good for us. And yes, it was lobbyists who did that. You can go back and look at why eggs were demonized and how the wheat lobby was instrumental in getting that done, in spite of doctors at that meeting voraciously defending eggs. But they were overruled because moolah. Now, that puts me in the position where I'm sitting here going, okay, they've lied to us. What's wrong with trying something just a little bit different? Because if we do take some of these chemicals out and we replace them with the natural alternative, guess what we're not seeing anywhere else? We're not seeing people drop dead in the UK or in France or in any other country that has done that, or in Canada. We haven't seen people drop dead from that stuff. So at the very least, what could happen? Well, flavor may change just a little bit. Maybe, right? And is that really a big deal? Isn't that a fair question to ask? Instead of just getting so visceral in your defense of chemicals and stuff like that in the food, maybe you don't agree with RFK, but what would it hurt to give it a try? And if we try it for 10 or 15 or 20 years and there hasn't been any change, then you can go back and go, hey, remember that RFK Jr. guy and he told us to do all this stuff? It really didn't improve anything, but it did make things more expensive, so maybe we can go back to the chemical stuff. And maybe that makes things a little bit more affordable. Okay, well, what's wrong with giving it a go, right? So we got to talk about the New York Times thing, because the New York Times did fact check RFK on the Fruity Pebbles thing, and it was hysterical because they owned themselves and they were too stupid to realize it, and they actually published it. We got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth. All right, so the New York Times decided that they were going to fact check RFK Jr. And it could be the worst fact check of all time. So RFK, he went on TikTok and he started talking about some of the additives in the foods and all of that. Now, I haven't listened to the TikTok, so I'm not going to play it for you. I don't think he cusses in it, but I didn't screen it, so I'm not going to. So the New York Times just could not help it. Okay, so they wrote an entire piece, and he's got Cheez-Its on there, and Doritos, and Captain Crunch, and he's got a bunch of stuff that's on the table, and he's just highlighting the things that are in them that you can't get anywhere else. It's only in the American supply. So the New York Times says, Mr. Kennedy has singled out Fruit Loops as an example of a product with too many artificial ingredients, questioning why the Canadian version has fewer than the U.S. version. But he was wrong. Now, this is the New York Times. The New York Times is supposed to be the most prestigious newspaper in the entire world, right? That's what they claim. They're not, but that's what they claim. So Kennedy goes out there and he says Fruit Loops has too many artificial ingredients. And then he points out, hey, the Canadian version has less of these artificial ingredients. And then the New York Times says that Kennedy was wrong. The ingredient list is roughly the same, although Canada's has natural colorings made from blueberries and carrots, while the U.S. product contains red dye 40, yellow 5, and blue 1, as well as butylated hydroxytoluene, or BHT, a lab-made chemical that is used for freshness, according to the ingredient label. This is the New York Times' own fact check. The New York... So, naturally, I mean, everybody is laughing hysterically at the New York Times. No, Kennedy was wrong. There's not too many artificial ingredients. Basically, the ingredient list is the same, except for in Canada, they use natural colorings from blueberries and carrots, but in the U.S., they use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chemicals. That's what he just said, you dits. The great lady said dits, by the way. And Chad Cohn spitting out my coffee after reading this New York Times air quote fact check of RFK Jr. It's like, I don't know if they're arguing. This is the thing. Like, they're so stupid. They were arguing that the total number of ingredients, I guess, was the same, roughly. That's not what he said. He doesn't care about that. Then, more broadly, Mr. Kennedy has set an agenda to root out what he considers corruption in the arena of government and public health, arguing that regulatory agencies overseeing food and drugs have been working hand in hand with corporate America to enhance profits rather than to benefit consumers. Well, that's a known fact, by the way. Many of the issues Mr. Kennedy raises about healthier foods and on changing the practices of established industries through tougher measures have traditionally been pursued by Democrats. Yes, he is one. You idiots. They fact-checked themselves into oblivion and didn't even realize that they had actually done it. So Nestlé is out there, saying that, hey, we're going to downplay RFK Jr.'s packaged food stuff. Nestlé on Tuesday sought to play down any differences with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has been critical of the packaged food, saying that it shared the next U.S. health agency chief's desire to improve agricultural practices and nutrition. And so you got Nestle even going like, yeah, we're with you, man. They're the largest packaged food group with products ranging from Kit Kat snacks to Nescafe coffee to noodles and pet food and everything else. So even Nestle is like, yeah, okay, we're okay with this. Like, we'll work with them. We'll change things. Folks, you can't. The fact that the media hates anybody associated with Trump, even if 6 months ago they'd be like, yeah, RFK Jr.'s on it, man. He's right. This fluoride thing, Dr. Leanna Wen, who is a favorite of left-wing activists, even she's out there saying that, hey, he's got a point about fluoride. We got more coming up. You're tuned into The Burning Truth.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. It is Tuesday, which means we bring Pastor Lucas Miles onto the program to bring us a little bit closer to God, because let's be honest with you, I don't help you with that the rest of the week. Pastor Miles, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Casey. Good to be on the program.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for the time. And I guess, well, okay, I thought something was real interesting. So Mike Pence, who has not had a very good relationship with Donald Trump since leaving the White House, Mike Pence has now urged the Senate Republicans to not confirm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And we started the show talking about the whole Fruit Loop thing that happened with the New York Times over the last couple of days, but his position on this was that RFK had his abortion stance, and therefore he should not be head of HHS. When I talked about this yesterday, Pastor, was like, well, we've got Roe out of the federal court, now goes to the state courts. RFK probably doesn't have a ton of influence there anymore. What would be the big issue with that if he did harbor that belief? Because he's supposed to be there to do other things. But I don't know. Am I missing something here?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, we look at this, and you have multiple former Democrats that are on kind of the Trump ticket that really, I mean, you can't even argue this. I mean, they helped him win the election, right? This is how he won, both electoral college as well as the popular vote. Is I think that Elon moved the needle and RFK moved the needle, and even kind of the ancillary team members, we'll call them, kind of a Joe Rogan coming alongside of him. Like, these things definitely moved the needle for him. And I am an abolitionist when it comes to abortion. I would be very fine with a national ban. I would have no problem with that. I don't see it even as a religious issue. I think just based upon the existing laws of our land, there's no logical reason why abortion should be allowed. I think that's very, very difficult, for somebody on the other side to defend. But I will say this kind of in defense of Trump is that, although, these people that he's kind of pushing forward, that, they might not be aligned in every single area. I think when the voters voted for Donald Trump, they knew very well his intentions on putting these people on cabinets. Maybe not every one, but, he was very open about how he wanted to use RFK. In rallies, he would say, look, he's going to help make America healthy again. We're just not going to let him touch the oil. Robert,
right.
You don't get to touch the oil over here. We're not going to let you talk about fracking. We're still going to drill, baby drill, and so like he set parameters. And I think that, it's right. People have a right to ask questions. They have a right to use their voice. They have a right to let people know what they think. Of course, Mike Pence has the right to kind of say what he wants to say. But I think that, people knew what they were getting into when they voted for Donald Trump. And I don't think this is a surprise to a lot of Trump, followers with this. And it's difficult. I mean, it's as a Hoosier, I want to be. I mean, I do have a respect for Mike Pence in many areas, but I think that this is an area where it would be better if he did sit out, because I don't think he's helping his case. It's just continuing to reinforce what people have thought about him. That and I think it's becoming just kind of this resounding gong that's not really making any sort of actual change or effect in things.
It's just it. It's like, if he's not going to have any effect on abortion, then what's the point of saying he shouldn't be confirmed? If he's going to be there to do a specific job, is he going to be good at that specific job? And if the abortion thing isn't relevant, it'd be like saying that RFK is, maybe he's a war hawk in Ukraine and Trump isn't, then we shouldn't approve him just because of that. But he's going to HHS. Like, he's not going to have a big influence on this. And you're right. The two of them have been very, very public about their negotiation before RFK threw his endorsement behind and was, going to come onto his cabinet, that they were going to have a specific sort of a working relationship. RFK knows his place, Trump knows his place, and that they were going to hash that stuff out privately. It wasn't going to be a big battle, and that they were going to have disagreements, and that was going to be something that would come up. But HHS director is not going to have broad influence over abortion policy in the United States, particularly after the reversal of Roe. So I don't know. It just seemed like it was just another. I want to poke at Trump just for the sake of poking at Trump, and it just didn't seem. That's
what it felt. It's what it felt like, I think, to me and probably a lot of other people. And look, I mean, I have some dear friends that have been commenting about how in the past Elon has made statements about universal basic income and kind of his support of that. And so, there's people getting hurt. Well, I don't see that's what he's going to be involved in. I don't think he's going to be shaping, economic policy. I think he's going to be looking for ways for the government to cut costs and help get a smaller government. And that's what he's being commissioned to do. And I think as long as we have strong leadership, which I think that Trump is able to provide, and kind of keep people in these lanes, that, look, there's a place to play, for these individuals. And I think that this is one of the benefits about Trump. Love or hate other things about him, I do think he has the opportunity to be a little bit more of a centrist in certain areas, to draw people together who are not given to, huge extremes on either side, and to see kind of America rally around, some core values again, when we have, NFL players, both white and black, that are doing the Trump dance out on the field. That's a big change from what we saw, previously. And so, I think there's a lot of positive things. Doesn't mean we need to we always need to keep our eye on the government. Doesn't matter who's in there. But, I'm still very optimistic in terms of where we're headed.
So one interesting change with Congress coming up as Republicans do take over both houses is that a Sarah McBride will be the first transgender member of Congress. Well, this has led Representative Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina, to introduce a bill barring Sarah McBride from going into the women's restroom on Capitol Hill. For those of you who don't know, Nancy Mace is a sexual assault survivor. And so she's making this a very big issue. And this has led to a lot of people saying, no, this transgender person should be able to go into the women's restroom in Congress. And I feel like all over the years, Pastor, the federal government kind of avoided this because it really wasn't affecting them. Well, now it's affecting them, and suddenly they can't run and hide from this. This is the battle that parents have been having with schools and things like that all over the country for several years now. Well, now it's a battle that Congress has to deal with. How do you see this shaking out?
We just hosted Chloe Cole last night at our church.
I was so upset I was out of town.
From St. Mary's.
Yeah, I really wanted to be there.
And she was phenomenal. And if the audience is not familiar with Chloe, she's kind of gained national attention as a detransitioner, and shares her story really about how just as a young adolescent that she was unhappy with a lot of aspects of herself and sought counsel with initially with her parents and teachers, and eventually a doctor that encouraged her towards transition, that her doctor did specifically. And this, just talks about the really the horrors that she went through on the other side of this. And again, this is an issue that, especially when it comes to minors, it should be black and white. And my hope is that President Trump will seek to really kind of follow the way that Indiana has gone and really led the nation in, and that is that this becomes something that is really banned for minors at minimum. When you start seeing this with adults, again, if an adult wants to kind of live in a fantasy land and take on some particular identity, I'm okay with them being free to do so long as that doesn't start affecting other people negatively. I know that if I had a wife that was a member of Congress and using a restroom and having another, male member of Congress that thought that they were a female using that bathroom, I wouldn't be very comfortable with that. And I don't think she would be very comfortable with that. And so, look, this is starting to kind of hit, I think, close to home for these individuals. I hope that, it causes them to deal, with this and address it. I think that certain members on the left are starting to recognize that some of these really radical far left policies that they have kind of, kind of died on the hill over, that really those were some of the things that caused people to turn away from them this election and vote for Donald Trump. Because, it's like, hey, I like certain principles on the left, but, this is kind of taken a little too far. And I think a lot of Americans are sensing that. So, look, as a Christian, of course, I have very strong feelings about this. I think it's wrong. But these are people who need help. They're not people that should be running our nation. And, unfortunately, we have, people, getting voted in, not necessarily on merit at times, but simply because it's some sort of virtue signaling, over the particular case. And I think that's a lot what happened in this instance.
And for those of you who also may not have seen this, but when they did the exit polling, it turns out that the trans issue was one of the top issues that people voted on, particularly people who did not support Trump previously. They had actually come out and supported him because of the radical trans agenda of the Democratic Party. And actually, one of Nancy Mace's more moderate Republican colleagues, who's unnamed in this Axios article, says, a presidential election may have actually been decided on this issue. And they're not entirely wrong based on the exit data. It's the number one social issue in the country that people voted on, not abortion, the trans issue. So it was the economy, it was the border, and then it was that. Like, those are the three issues that people voted on. So Nancy Mace, one, sexual assault survivor, she's right there. She's going to have to deal with this. She said, okay, point blank, let's get it out. Let's put all of the cards on the table, and starting to see who is going to back her, who isn't going to back her. Of course, the usual suspects are obviously opposed. But we'll see how this all shakes out. But at least Congress is forced to deal with the actual issue that parents have had to deal with for a number of years now without having any support or attention at all from the federal government. So that's nice to see.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be very telling on which direction they go. And look, we could make a strong case that it was this issue in particular that really sparked a lot of that grassroots MAGA support,
Sure.
With kind of what we would call the mama bear, a really, change that happened in this nation when this started, being revealed, what was happening in our schools and drag queen story times and this sort of stuff that really sparked a lot of that initial passion and excitement for change in this country. And so without a doubt, whether or not it was the top issue, I don't know, but it was certainly one of the most important issues for this election. And hopefully they do the right thing and continue to, push us back towards, a little bit more of a normal society here.
All right, Pastor Miles, how can people learn more about you and maybe run into future events like what happened with Chloe Cole yesterday?
Yeah, for sure. So come out to Influence Church. We are growing, and it's been so exciting lately. It's I think the last couple of weeks we've set new attendance records every week, and a lot of them say, "I heard you on Casey," and so that's always exciting. So come out to Influence Church, 10 o'clock Sunday mornings. You go to influencechurch.com as well, and if you want to follow our events, of course, you can follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook as well. Influence Church, and that's Influence with no I in the front. It's just capital N, and you can find us there or hit me up as Mr. Lucas Miles.
And get that app too, because it has your sermons in it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, our app is phenomenal. So you can download that on the App Store under Influence Church as well, and you can keep up with announcements, news, past messages, all that.
All right, Pastor Miles, I do appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. Take care.
Thanks, Casey.
All right,
bye.
That was your Tuesday Tide. The Pastor Lucas Miles. We got more coming up on The Burning Truth. Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. Don't forget, you can watch the live stream on Rumble. Go to rumble.com/Casey the host. Just a quick little Ukraine update. So the United States gave Ukraine permission to use our missiles in an offensive capacity. So the ATACMs, CMS missiles have been used to fire deep into Russia. Russia has now lowered the threshold for nuclear response, etc. North Korean troops that are fighting in Ukraine right now are just getting slaughtered. First of all, North Korean troops, I think most people probably realize North Korean troops are very, very ill prepared. They don't have any experience at all. They're super ill prepared. They're as close to amateurs as you can get in a standing army. And they decided that they were going to help Russia as the two nations move a little bit closer together. They were going to help Russia and gain some experience in how to fight the West. And they're just getting slaughtered. Again, rumors that we cannot confirm that North Korea's Kim Jong-un not real thrilled with North Korean troops being used as cannon fodder with the Kharkiv offensive, which is not doing very well for the Russians. The Russians are doing okay in some parts. Kharkiv has been a massive failure for them. The Ukrainians got it locked down. There's only 2 roads in, and the Russians have not figured out that you're not supposed to drive down open roads yet. It just goes all the way back to the beginning of the war, but I digress. So the North Korean troops have been used, and they're just getting smoked. Lots of drone video of North Korean troops right before they get killed. They cut the video feed off when they put them on public, and then when you hop onto their telegrams, like it's all uncensored. But North Korean troops are just getting absolutely smoked over there by the Ukrainians, not doing well at all, which is good. But at the same time, that's going to cause tension, I assume, in North Korea and Russia. Russia's doing everything it can to win territory before Trump gets into office. Ukraine is doing everything they can to resist those things and then hold on to territory that they have gained. All to have a negotiating position when the negotiations start to happen, as both sides have now publicly stated numerous times they are willing to do. Zelensky, of course, says that he believes the conflict will come to a swifter resolution now that Trump is president. We'll ultimately not know until that happens, but both sides are trying to get what they can before that happens, and it does appear to be escalating a little bit. Got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth.
Podcasts by Federated Media.